Thanks, Joanna. Are we live?
Yeah. There you go.
Do you have to let people in or they can just jump in? Okay. Hi, everybody.
Wait, hold on. You're live, but it's saying live in 2 minutes.
We're live now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Here we are again for another installment of Yogi to Yogi. Let's jump right in with questions that we have here. Bobby is asking, what is the most pith exercise to discern between what is essence and what isn't? Well, what's usually the gold standard for that is what is permanent, what is not permanent. That's kind of the gold standard. So you can think about it as, I want to get in a relationship with somebody. Is it essence or is it ego, right? Is it essence or is it a ghost realm motive to try to get with somebody? Really simple. But this relies on clear self-reflection, right? So wisdom relies on wisdom. So I think to myself, okay, what is the deepest motive I have for this relationship? What's it really based on? And then you got to be able to be honest with yourself. So like I always say, it's the same old formula, Bobby. It's clear self-reflection, brutal honesty, the courage to make the right decision. These three things. And I don't find them in a lot of people, to be quite honest. This is why we always end up in the shits. So if you can really look at yourself, really look at your motive, you go, that motive is transient. In other words, I love this person, I'm going to get with them. And if a year from now they figure out I'm not best for them and they want to move on, I'm still going to love them, still going to support them, still I'm not going to wail and gnash teeth and so on. That is an essence decision, right? Versus ego structure, ahankara, whatever, bad decision based on transient goal or something, right? Now, I'm not saying in a relationship situation that you have to always choose for essence and choose for eternal love. Not at all. You want to have serial sexual contacts with people because you're free to do so, fine. If everybody's consensual and everybody's benefiting, you do whatever you want. If you have found a way to work out promiscuity into your sadhana, let us know about it. We haven't figured it out, but great. That's not the point. You're asking about how do I know essence from non-essence? So I think it comes down to the permanence question almost always. And that's what wisdom is. Wisdom was always defined for me by both my great teachers as that which is eternal versus that which is temporal. So as much as we can link it to the eternal, we go, okay. And I don't mean eternal in the sense of one of the four faults that Buddhism would always talk about, that eternalism. I don't mean eternalism of some spiritual materialistic experience. What I mean about eternal is not based on temporal. Yeah, just that simple. So good question. Lead off question. What exactly is a spiritual karma? You've mentioned in some YouTube videos, but haven't spoken in depth about it. Oh, I have actually, Bobby. In the karma lectures that we give. And I think the karma lecture was in the foundations course. That's right, isn't it? Foundations was karma lecture, yeah. So we talk about spiritual karma, and it's just a term, right? It's just a term. We have many ways of categorizing karma so we can understand it. And one of the ways is to say that we have ancestral karma. We have karma comes from our ancestors, that's obvious. We have karma that comes from being conceived from that time till the present moment till you die, this life karma. All the conditioning that you self-condition, that you're conditioned from your environment, teachers, school, religion, experiences, you name it. And then we have the third category in this one way of looking at karma, as in what types of karma. We have spiritual karma. Spiritual karma is past life karma. So basically what we draw in and bring to us from our past lives. I was just teaching Ayurveda last night to a Chinese group and in China, and we were going into the formation of the Constitution. And the Constitution actually is formed also a little bit, you know, whether you're Vata, Pitta, Kapha, predominant, that kind of thing, your Constitution is actually formed quite a bit from past life karma. That's a definite flavor that comes through to form who you are now, because you can have kids from a family that, like two kids that are completely different constitutions. You can say, yeah, well, one was born at this time of year, one's born at that time of the year, and one's expressing these genes from the parent, not these genes. Yeah. But it actually, why are these genes being expressed from this parent X versus parent Y more than the other sibling did? The why question comes down to the karma a lot of time. And that's past life karma. So whenever you hear me say spiritual karma, usually I'm referring just to past life karma. Third one from Bobby. When you have a Tejas Ojas Prana disturbance, how is it different from trauma? Or is it the same? What are some things that can be done to rebalance, cultivate the Sadhaka Pitta? Wow, loaded question, because trauma has so many different definitions by so many different people. You have the Gabor Mate school of trauma, and you have the warrior school of trauma. And then, there's so many different ways of looking at trauma. Is it really trauma, or is it just, I wasn't picked for kickball. I was picked last for kickball in the playground every time when I was a kid, and now I can't get on with my life. And the postmodernistic culture of America allows me to not get on with my life because now I'm traumatized. I just can't do anything. Or were you, tied up as a kid, burned with cigarettes, and locked in a closet? Okay, that's trauma. And I have a student that had experienced that. That is not cool to have your mother be doing that to you. So there's trauma and there's trauma, and I don't really know what kind of thing you mean as trauma. So I'm going to table that question for later because it's kind of complex. Prana, just to make simple though, if we're looking at trauma as anything from the outside that came in and conditioned you towards negative mental health, negative perceptions of yourself or the world, a general definition of trauma, right? Some kind of really strong conditioning that comes from an outside incident, right? Is it different than prana tejas ojas disturbance? Well, you can have prana tejas ojas disturbance without having had any trauma. You could be the king or the queen who was born into perfect circumstances, died in perfect circumstances, and have prana tejas ojas disturbed a lot during their lifetime, because prana tejas ojas disturbance is the subtilized form of vata, pitta, and kapha, and subtilized form of wind, fire, and water. And this is the subtilized form, meaning this is our consciousness. The cause of tejas, ojas, prana disturbances are almost always our mind or our consciousness. So nothing to do with outside trauma in that sense, okay? What are things that can be done to rebalance or cultivate your sadhaka pitta, though? That's a good question. Sadhaka pitta is one of the 5 subtypes of pitta dosha. And this seems to be the year that we're going to be teaching a lot of Ayurveda. So get ready for these courses. This subtype of pitta dosha, or the fire-water element, the force that runs our health or our illness, fire and water, pitta dosha. Sadhaka pitta is associated with the brain, and it's associated with high-level discrimination, high-level thinking, scientific analytical thinking, this kind of thing. So what can be done to rebalance it and cultivate sadhaka pitta? Well, the brain is plastic. So first of all, we have to challenge our brain. There's a lot of brain gymnastic courses you can do online. Those are very good for sadhaka pitta. Exercising wisdom is really important. When we constantly go against the normal logical wisdom, the rational wisdom that sadhaka pitta, the rational intelligence that sadhaka pitta presents to us, and we go against that, and our ideologies influence how we think and feel about things instead of what reality really is, the sadhaka pitta is not being utilized to its fullest. Like, you can have some people that are pretty rational and pretty logical and very good arguments they make and so forth, but they're a racist, or they're a classist, or, they're obviously wrong in some ways of a larger, wider view. So don't confuse the intelligence of sadhaka pitta, the subtype of pitta. Don't confuse that with wisdom. But if we cultivate sadhaka pitta, it leads to wisdom. It leads to tejas, being beautifully bright and wisdomful. So how then do we cultivate that? Well, use the brain, use the logic centers. Most importantly, try to adhere to reality. Try to stay out of your ideologies that help you, or that ideologies that we have that are like lenses over our view of reality. As much as possible, stay out of that. Breathe, stay aware, allow everything to occur without any kind of overlay of projection. That's one of the greatest ways to develop sadhaka pitta right there. That's core in the pith. Then if you want to take herbs, Bacopa moniera, that's a great one for sadhaka pitta. There's a lot of other good ones. Vacha, Bacopa moniera, attenuated mercury is fantastic for it, but don't take attenuated mercury unless you know who made it, because it'll kill you if not. But anyway, that's more for the Ayurveda talk. That's a lot of depth and detail. And if you're not really, really, really well versed in Ayurveda, giving out little bits of advice about it can be dangerous. I'll kind of like let that out for now. 4, are there any pointers or red flags in addition to the 21 precepts that we can look out for to avoid improper contact with objects of the senses? Other than 21 precepts cover like everything possible, I think. But what can we say? Improper contact. Think about the types of contacts that are going to either feel very damaging, contact with the senses that can feel very like harsh and hard to watch, that we kind of sometimes watch. Like there's a Game of Thrones episode where the king burns his own little cute little sweet daughter, who you can see he loves, but he's under a cult influence. So he burns her alive at the stake to gain magic power, to win something. And you're like, oh, it's just so hard to watch. And it actually does impress you. You know, you get conditioned by that kind of thing. That is what they're talking about when the senses are making contact with the objects, and the objects are inappropriate. So there you have like sort of like harshness damaging you. That's not good for you. And then the other one would be like porn. You're watching people having sex, and it's stimulating desires in you that you can't fulfill for yourself, really, usually. And it's also creating strange thoughts about what kind of sex is fulfilling or enjoyable. You know, it's all about abuse these days and nasty stuff. And, you know, and that's not where your senses want to get. They don't want to be on those objects, because again, that conditions your mind. And then more of the same will come out, and this becomes the lens you view the world with. So there's many ways we can see this kind of thing. Long time ago, many times in my past teaching, I was vocal about why I didn't like modern art. Most modern art, like 95%, 99%. And people would get very offended, especially in Berkeley, because everyone's an artist in Berkeley. You know, I could take paint and throw it on a wall in Berkeley, and I think I'm great. And everybody else should acknowledge that I'm great, because this is postmodernism. But actually, you know, all kidding aside, why was I so against modern art? And the audience really couldn't grasp what I was trying to get at. But until we are completely self-realized, where we realize that the two channels that lead from our heart to our eyes and project the whole universe, until we know that that's what's actually happening, we're in the driver's seat with that experience, which is stage 10 out of 12, very high, 12 being rainbow body. So I'm talking Mahasiddha here. Until then, some part of us, some percentage of us, some amount of time in the day, every day, is going to be looking out at the world thinking it's real. And we wake up, oh wait, the view. And then we fall back into our awareness, and we remember, no, I projected, but still we're being conditioned. But those times when we really fall asleep, we're being heavily conditioned. Well, you make an effort if you work in the Dharma, live in the Dharma, you make an effort to surround yourself. See this room? Our whole house looks like this, actually. We have no, my wife is laughing. We have no nice paintings of silly things, you know. Why? All we have is, everywhere I look, I want to see reflected essence and Dharma. And if I look out my window right here, palm trees, ocean, flowers everywhere, Ganesha statue, you know, it's the same thing. What you see is what you become. That's a fact. So it's very important, like in the modern art situation, this example, when I see classical art, I see things that are reflecting beauty, things that are reflecting back to me, you know, like a Taoist landscape painting with the long scrolls, and it says the heavens, and it has the high mountains, maybe a little hermitage, a little hermit coming down the steps, you know, and then you have the valley, and then the water, and the clouds. So it's like this complete picture, and your mind takes in that complete beauty, the expanse of heaven to earth and human contact between it, you know. This classical art, like when I walked, the first time I walked down that's the stairway in the Louvre and down into the basement area, and you go to the right and you come into the Monet room. The very first thing you're hit with is a purple wall and a huge lily pond, and you're like, oh, And I mean, I just was starstruck, and tears just rolled down my face, because that capturing, that artist's ability to capture beauty and bring it back, that imitates real nature, but brings out the essence of it, right? That's what we want to have. We want our eyes to see that and remember our own heart, our own essence. I can't do that with most modern art, with the classic toilet bowl stuck on the wall that started the whole modern art movement. What? It's like, what? If you're trying to show my chaos and you're trying to show your angst and all this other kind of stuff, I get it. But like, I already have that. That's what I'm trying to transcend. That's what I'm trying to transform. So I don't need that kind of art to make me remember how messed up I am. I don't need porn to make me remember that we have 10,000 years of misogyny, abusing women. I don't need to see violent scenes on movies over and over again. They're real gratuitous, because there's enough violence all around us. So this is important, really important, everybody. Purify the senses by purifying what they're making contact with first. That's kind of important. Okay, an anonymous question. In regards to the statement, everything in the universe eats, right? So we have a maxim in the Mahasiddha Yoga tradition that everything is eating, everything eats in order to live, right? Everything. And there's a follow-on to that, which says you should be eating rather than being eaten. So the second part of that is what people forget often. Yeah, everything eats, everything in the universe is, I should be eating so I'm not getting eaten, which is, how it works, basically. And that means inhabiting yourself so strongly, inhabiting your life so strongly that other people can't take advantage of you, that spirits and ghosts can't take advantage of you, that gods and goddesses can't seduce you and lure you away from the Dharma. Yes, there are unenlightened gods and goddesses, which will give you promises of power and wealth and, knowledge and, everything, but it leads you off the Dharma, So basically everything's trying to eat. Of course, it's not for free. They're going to take something from you, right? All these beings, and human beings as well, are going to take something from you. So, okay. Everything in the universe eats. How true is it? It's very true. It's what's happening all the time, right? Everything. Sometimes it's symbiotic, right? You have more microorganisms in your body than you have bodily cells, which is kind of amazing for people to contemplate if you've never heard of this. But your biome is basically bigger in number of cells than your whole body. And the interesting thing about it is that your biome, the cells in your biome, each one is a live, independent being. So they're eating, right? When you get an infection, that's just something eating you. That's it. When you get cancer, that's when you eat yourself. Things are really out of whack, right? So something's always eating. Now, does the earth exist to be eaten or to eat? Is the further on this question. The earth exists to be eaten or to eat? Isn't it just a space for things to manifest? Does the earth exist to be eaten or to eat? It's in the same game. The earth is eating and being eaten. Someday the earth's going to be taken into the sun. The sun's going to eat the earth. That's how it is. And we on the planet eat the things of the earth. Yeah, it's very simple. Isn't it just a space for things to manifest? No, earth is not just a space for things to manifest. In one way of thinking it is, things are always just manifesting. But another way of it, the earth manifested as well. So it's not really like a space or a container. It manifested as well. It's a temporal thing. It will also be consumed by the sun at some point, scientifically speaking. That's it. Shiva doesn't eat. He just is, right? There is no Shiva. There is no God. There is none of that. There's only consciousness. There is no God that does things. So if you're a Shaivist and practicing Shaivist yoga and you're new to Trikamahasiddha yoga, it's based on Shaivism, but it's based on a form of Shaivism that is Shaivist yoga, which was very similar to Buddhist tantric yoga. It's where they got their tantric yoga from. And then they traded back and forth for many centuries. So in Shaivist yoga, there's not really the sense that there's a God and we're all going to become one with that God. And that this God, is neutral or whatever, let's just forget all that stuff about a God, about a big being. It just doesn't exist. So forget about Shiva eating or not eating. He just is. Consciousness just is. And because of that, whatever is manifesting is eating each other. That's how it works. If you don't like eating, you like the idea of consuming or growing or adding to itself or whatever, you can go for anything you want. Doesn't matter. But that process is always going, constantly. Okay. Goodbye, Anonymous. Hello, Michelle. What are the movements of Kundalini throughout the stages? Oh, Michelle, that is a really great question and a topic of a book. I'm drawing the graphics for it, and I'll be sending them off to the IT fella as soon as I can get some spare time to get him to start to do it. Kundalini movements through the stages is very beautiful, but I'm going to save it for the book. Suffice to say that most people get it wrong. In the early stages, Kundalini mostly moves down from the crown down to the base and undergoes what we undergo like a roto-rooter. I don't know if you know that from the States, this old sewer treatment system that used to be sold in the 50s and 60s on TV called roto-rooter, right? It comes and drills down and just mines all the muck. That's the first movement of Kundalini. When people feel all these energies moving and things going up and little blisses, they get all excited about it. But the truth is, overall, most of us are going through waking down process first. The first movement of Kundalini is to wake in general. Then it moves down. So there's an awakening within the being, and then it pulls the energy down and goes down. Then once we're getting up higher in the stages, then it starts to move up. Then it starts to bring all the gifts and opening up the chakras and the rest of the channels. And eventually we get to the bindus. And eventually the Kundalini goes all the way up, but then it comes back down again and is in our heart. When we're in Mahasiddha, it's back in our heart. We're in full resonance. There's no up or down movement anymore. Any kind of direction is nonsensical. And Maha Kundalini manifests, the Maha Bindu manifests, and we resolve birth and death and disappear into the full Buddha nature that we are. Okay? That's a short version. Sorry, the details will come later. It's too detailed. If I started it now and even did a little bit of it, Michelle, what will happen is you'll have an incomplete picture, and there's nothing worse than giving incomplete pictures, incomplete teachings. So it's not good. So I'll give you a general overview just then, right? It's better. Kendra, can you speak about being protective and how being protective of your teachers, family, etc., is a hindrance on the path? Is it a hindrance to protect those you love? I personally don't think it's a hindrance to protect those I love. I would take a bullet for those I love. So I don't quite understand that. Protective, if you're being protective because your ego identity is associated with that person. Let's say you love this philosophy, some kind of philosophy, the philosophy espoused by Jordan Peterson, the great psychologist Jordan Peterson. And you love his psychology. You're against postmodernism like him, against communism and Marx like him, you know. Actually, I share a lot of the same ideas he does. We're from the same Ashkenazi tribe, so that makes sense. But anyway, let's say you're really into Jordan Peterson's work, and he's Canadian like you. And then you find that there are some people you're talking to who are really against Jordan Peterson, and they're attacking him, right? Well, you want to defend him. It's because of your attachment to his theory. It's because of your attachment to him, right? Then that becomes a negative protection. It's not really necessary to protect Jordan Peterson. He's a big boy. He can speak for himself. He argues all the time on many different forums for himself. So that's when protection is unnecessary and negative for your spiritual development. But if, of course, physical protection goes without saying, I know you would do whatever you need to do to protect someone you loved, right? So why wouldn't we do the same thing if they're being attacked on the internet, or if they're being attacked publicly, or, you know, whatever. So I see no problem extending that out as long as it's something that is not coming from your ego structure. That's the key, I think, when it comes to protection. When I was first taking my very first spiritual real initiation, I was 17 or 18, getting old now, I can't remember. I was 17 or 18, right around there, right in the border of it. That's why I can't remember which it was. And it was into Chan Buddhism. And I had like 360 vows I had to take. Like Mahayana Chan Buddhism mix. And I think the one I was into was Mahayana as far as the vows, but then the teacher was more Chan, which is more Taoist. And I had to take 360 vows. And in those were some vows to protect people who were unable to protect themselves from harm. And I asked my teacher about that afterwards. They said, well, you know, if you see an old lady getting mugged or something or raped, you have to step in, even if it means you're going to die. It's the right thing to do. So I'm like, okay. So I think this sense of protection for those who can't protect themselves is often very important, right? There's a lot of attacking going on today. I see so much aggression. It's incredible how much aggression goes on today. And I was watching an internet interview on a Joe Rogan Experience, with Joe and one of my favorite guys, Josh Barnett, who's a catch wrestler who was coached by my coach too. And I like a lot of what both of these guys think. And somebody was saying, I just think there's so much argumentation and bad mouthing that goes on these days simply because people can't be responsible for what they're saying. Because in the old world, like 30 years ago, old world, 20 years ago, before the internet and social media was such a big thing, somebody would just punch you right in the face if you said such horrible things to them that was feeding the public with a view of them. Now you got to remember, in the public eye, you have nothing but your own reputation. That's your money, your currency. So when someone is trashing your reputation and you don't deserve it, right? Then that's really a bad thing, because that's basically who we are on the outer level, on the physical world level. I'm not talking spiritual now, because there are traditions in the Mahasiddha tradition way back from about 300 or 400 BCE, before Jesus was born, till about 200 or 300 after, from India and Central Asia, where called the Mahavrata. These Vratans would set up a situation where the public despised them. They would set up some artificial situation where they were seen as a heinous criminal or something, just so everybody would hate them. So you could deal with the ego destruction and letting down that's necessary to do to go deep into the path, right? That's totally different. They want that to happen. But if you're a Mahasiddha path person, a tantric yoga practitioner, and you want to live in your society, live in your culture, and be a contributing member to the culture and so forth, and not bring more negative karma onto yourself, you have to maintain a good reputation as much as you can. And that means being really truthful and really honest and but powerful too, and standing up when things happen where people can try to put you down or something. So there was this beauty, and I often talk about it with my wife, and people will often think I'm a bit of a thug or a gorilla when I say this, but there are enough old people on this group who will understand what I'm saying, who are 50 and above, that people did not speak this way to each other a long time ago, or be so rude or so aggressive, argumentative, defamatory, slanderous, because there's just no way to keep up. The United States has a president in office right now who is one of the most slanderous, libelous people I've ever seen. Worst moral fiber character of people on the planet. And he's in the presidency, lies out of his both ends constantly. And that's now the standard. It's like it's destroyed the standard. It was bad enough with social media and postmodernism, where everybody has their own truth. Everybody has to be acknowledged by having, I have my own truth. I have my own experience of that person. Well, that doesn't make it right. And I don't have to respect it, right? So now we have this model for this in the White House, which is just horrific. So I like the old days. I like, if someone's going to get in my face, you have a duel. We had American presidents who had duels when people trashed them in newspapers or something, because there should be accountability. When you lose accountability, you are quickly going into chaos, quickly going into anarchy. When you lose accountability, it's a tough thing. So when it comes to protection, see if your ego is involved. If you're a renunciate, a hermit, then it doesn't matter. There's no protection necessary for you. But if you're in the world and you depend on being in the world as your public vehicle for communication, maybe for your business, maybe to affect social change because you're a politician or whatever, or run the local parents group or something for a school. I mean, you have to protect now your image, which is a bummer. But you can't be attached to that even, because it'll never be squeaky clean. You just have to be, okay, I'll do whatever I can, but I let it go. So it's all about attachment in the end. Okay, Kendra? Yov, I believe. Is that a name? Yov? Hello, Yov. I don't think I've ever had a question from you. I love your name. I'd like to know where it's from. The first spiritual tradition I was exposed to was the Jewish Kabbalah. It seems to have a view that in many ways is very close to the tantric one. True. It also has some similar esoteric practices which aren't a common knowledge. Unfortunately, it's mostly being learned intellectually these days. I understand that. I know a bit about Kabbalah. Personally, I found its teachings and models to be in a completely different level in depth and width than anything I was exposed to so far. But unfortunately or not, it's heavily entangled with the Jewish religion and Hebrew language, of course, like Sanskrit and Tantra. If you're familiar with it, how do you see it in comparison to other systems? I'm pretty familiar. I wasn't trained to any deep degree, but I had some Kabbalah friends and masters in Australia who taught me about it. And I understand Judaism fairly well. I was a student of religion pretty heavily, as you can imagine. So the Abrahamic religions and the cultural, societal milieu they grew out of, I understand a bit. So what about Kabbalah, right? And then, of course, Kabbalah developed a lot more once it even got away from Israel and developed in Eastern Europe quite a lot too. Baal Shem Tov, right? So the Kabbalah is pretty good, right? It's pretty good. As far as, I mean, good or bad, I don't mean to say it this way. It's very close to what we would call a all-inclusive, non-dual view of perfection, except for the God thing, right? So the God thing kind of, that's where it steps off. So it gets close, but no cigar. I'd actually put it pretty much on par with Kashmir Shaivism. The Mahasiddha view that we teach here, I see personally as a little bit wider. I'm not saying better. Better is for whom and when. You know, what's good for you is for whom and when in your development. Here, I'm not saying this is better. What I'm saying is it's wider. So Kashmir Shaivism is like this. Mahasiddha view is, I think, wider, a bigger umbrella. Kabbalah is the same, and I think Mahasiddha view is wider. What is the salient difference? So in my understanding of Kabbalah, from many teachers from different strains of Kabbalah, is that no matter what, right, and this is Sufism too, so I put the Sufism in the same category here, comparing it, contrasting it with Mahasiddha view. No matter how high you go in Kabbalah or Sufism, even if you disappear in light, the sense is that you are never a perfected, universalized being. There will always be God, and there will always be you refining the ability for God to shine through you. That's Kabbalah, right? I'm going to polish and get pure and pure and pure, so God's light shines unimpeded right through me, right? And then I look like, a beacon of light of God. That's Kabbalah in a nutshell. And then you say, well, but then when you become so associated and identified with that light, then you think you're God itself and so forth. Yeah, you can say that, I think, as a modern interpretation, but I don't really see that in Kabbalah teachings all the way. And you can say, well, they achieve a light body. Well, they achieve a light body, but there are many kind of light bodies. And they're not all what we call stage 12 rainbow light body. Now, this may be new to everybody on this group. I don't like to go into these kind of details because they're so far out. It doesn't really matter our day-to-day practice. It doesn't affect it much. But there are light bodies and there are light bodies, right? This is what you got to know now. It's possible to have a white light body, possible to have an immolation kind of fire element body manifestation. These are not rainbow light bodies where we've achieved the ultimate human potentiation. And that's the rainbow light body. And there's 4 levels of that. And the top one is complete potentiation. So we become an absolute Buddha, free of all limitations whatsoever. And as a Buddha, in Sanskrit, this idea of realization, right? As a fully realized being with no longer any limitation whatsoever, we become a Buddha like other Buddhas. There are infinite Buddhas. And we manifest universes of beings that we then bring to liberation, right? This is a very different idea than Sufism has or Kabbalah has. And in an odd way, in a very odd, strange way, I know some of you are going to be like, what is he talking about? It's related in some strange way to Mormonism, to the Church of Latter-day Saints, right? The Mormons. Why? How? Well, to whatever degree that young man, Joseph Smith, who started Mormonism, the Mormon religion, Church of Latter-day Saints, Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, to whatever degree he ate some mushrooms up in the mountains of upstate New York and tripped out and had some vision stuff and came back with this kind of religion. Of course, it had some content that was from other dimensions and was kind of on the money. And one of the key tenets of Mormonism is that when you die, if you keep following this faith and go to the Mormon top heaven, you keep evolving and you become a god. like God, the creator, that you are underneath as a Mormon while you're on earth. You become equal, completely co-equal. And then you have your own universe that you create, right? So it's kind of interesting that they had this idea. In fact, there were a lot of old traditions that had this idea. And it probably came from when Joseph Smith was tripping out on those mushrooms and saw some things like that out there. But that is not the same. Don't confuse that. That's spiritual materialism, actually. That's not the same as the kind of idea of a rainbow light body being a Mahasiddha from stage 10 who goes stage 11, 12 and manifests a rainbow body and becomes universalized completely, right? You don't create other beings just to have fun. Like you don't recreate another earth just because you're a big God who can do fun stuff. And that's also the flavor that is in Shaivism, in classical Trika Shaivism. There's a flavor, and I don't care who the philosopher or academic is, I'll debate it with them. It's clear that there's a flavor of, okay, I've now evolved into Shiva, now I'm Shiva, and Shiva does whatever it wants to do. And it does stuff just for pure joy and fun, to amuse itself. And it's like, really? You know, if that's the idea of the ultimate being, then count me out, because that's not very profound. Okay, so this is how I see the Kabbalah. It'll take you really far, but not all the way, is what I think about it personally. But, you know, I think it's better than being a Jew, for sure. Like you said, better than the religions. It's definitely the higher version. But like, I think all these older traditions are fading and finding it more difficult to find people that really want to practice and achieve the high levels. So the passing on of these very high levels are kind of disappearing. And I remember one of the rabbis in Australia who was arguing about Kabbalah a lot. I liked him up to a point. At one point he said, but Jewish souls are different than non-Jewish souls. And that's where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So he was like, basically in our version was saying that our Shiva nature or our nature of mind or our Buddha nature, Swaswarupa, whatever we call it in our system in Mahasiddha Yoga, you know, fundamentally they're the same. My nature is the same as Sukalia's, the same as Joanna's, the same as my neighbor's, but it's not the same as in their one. I have my own. It's based on spaciousness and awareness without object, pure gnosis. That's what it is. And so is everybody else's, right? That's the non-duality of it. But to say that mine would be superior to others or even different than others would be wrong. We misunderstand what non-duality means. So I had to part ways with this very famous Kabbalah teacher in Australia because he was saying basically Jewish souls are different. And in the whole spiritual process, they'll experience something different, you know, favored by God, all that kind of thing. So you get all kinds of crazy stuff. Like with Sufism now, you get Sufis that are super esoteric, are just like tantric yogins, like I'm talking to you about our philosophy. They'll agree with every point, even the practices, everything. And then you get Sufis that are also fundamental Islamists, basically, and you know want to blow up buildings and stuff. So it's a wide range nowadays. All right, thanks for that question. You don't get a lot of questions about the Abrahamic coalition of religions, and it's fun to go there sometimes. And Mormonism, weird enough. Guru Priya. I've been reading the Bihar book on Tattva Shuddhi. Swami Satya Sanganananda is brilliant and explains concepts so easily for lay mind. Yeah, she's a really nice lady. She talks about releasing energy from matter to reach higher consciousness. Can you expound on this concept? Sure. What you're learning when you practice Tattva Shuddhi, and we teach 4 forms of it in the school. That book only has what's called Pashu form. What happens when you're practicing Tattva Shuddhi is you're disentangling the 5 elements from their conditioning. That's what's supposed to happen. So if you like that book in the practice, get my oral instructions on Tattva Shuddhi because it goes way beyond the book. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's definitely more result producing, no question. So what you're doing is disentangling your 5 elements from the karmas that are conditioning and limiting them. And then that ultimately leads to a rainbow light body, not to mention realization while you're still in the physical body. And so all of the category of practices that are disentangling do this. So samuchara, munchara, pawa, any of the practices where you eject your consciousness or transfer your consciousness out of the body, which is what Tattva Shuddhi is doing, actually. Kechara, the original ancient practice of Kechara, Kechari. And any of these kinds are transforming and releasing the binding of the karmas in the 5 elements, either rapidly, like boom, like shooting as we do in those practices that involve shooting, or slowly rolling up. Like even in Swami Rujananda's Kriya Yoga of rolling up, the rolling up exercise is also to release you from those limiting karmas. So this is basically what's going on. You're releasing not energy from matter. Swamiji was big on talking about things in physics terms back in the 50s, 60s, because it was all new and it was interesting to everybody. But you're not actually releasing energy from matter. You're really actually understanding what the real nature of matter is, which is a pure light display, pure projection that only your consciousness keeps limited. That's what happens when you free up the 5 elements. And then, yeah, the energy, the light is released from its limitation. In other words, it attains its natural condition. So a lot of times you talk about transforming energy and it sounds like a alchemical transformation that occurs in space-time and so on. And certainly there's an effect that we experience because part of our mind is in space-time, but the nature of our mind is not, but our mind's expression is, right? But basically it's a matter of instant recognition of the true nature of the 5 elements as manifested spontaneously from essence in the game of life, So rolling that backwards, taking the limitation and rolling it back up with Tattva Shuddhi or 5 element purification practice, as you're talking about, is to unwind the karmas of earth, then water, then fire, then wind, then space, and go up beyond that. And that's a beautiful practice. So we do that a lot to kind of disentangle, to keep ourselves from grabbing onto materialistic view. And it's very important to do. The trick is not to become ungrounded and spaced out. Okay. That's it on those questions that were sent in ahead of time. Thank you very much. Now let's go to ones that are being sent in this morning, if there are any. There are? Okay. Good morning, hello, good evening, good morning, hello, hi. Mr. Natural. I keep thinking that's like a professional wrestling name. That would be the greatest name. Hello, I'm Mr. Natural. So, true. Leonardo, okay. I feel like meditating longer. Okay, go ahead. When reaching the blue, boundless bindu during Tattva Shuddhi, would it be a hindrance to the practice as a whole? Can I use it as long meditation practice? Leonardo, it was very, what you're doing here is very classic, very, very classic tantric yoga practice. You would use some way, some method, whether it was Kriya Yoga or Tattva Shuddhi, whatever. When you finally reach the blue bindu, then they'll just abide there. So that's a one level of meditation practice, to abide at the level of the blue bindu. It's a medium level practice. It's not very high, although it feels very blissful and so forth. It's still based on trance, but it was a way to subtleize ourselves and finally get into the higher states of meditation. The boundless bindu during Tattva Shuddhi. Yeah. So you go from there, you want to leap off from there. And that's where you would then use the more advanced practices of meditation if you know them. But even abiding at the blue bindu and just leaping off and relaxing there and just opening as much as you can, that's great. That accrues a certain development of your wisdom body and can be used for higher practice later. So that's actually how it was used. So very good. So you can stay there as long as you want to stay there. That's great. That kind of indulgence is pretty good, as long as we don't become egoically attached to that kind of indulgence, right? Okay, not many questions today. Magda Verdict. I agree that the Mahasiddha view is wider than many and comprehensive in a sense and open to various religions. A real discovery for me. Oh, okay, not a question. Yes, very good. Nara Yoga. Since we're on the subject, can you share your thoughts on Gnosticism and its parallels with Kashmir Shaivism and non-dualism? I wouldn't, Nara Yoga, because I'm not an expert on Gnosticism. I've studied it a little bit. I studied Gnostic Gospels of Jesus. I studied Gnosticism a little bit, but I don't feel expert enough on Gnosticism to contrast or compare. And Kashmir Shaivism, I hope you understand that Trika Mahasiddha Yoga, though it uses a lot of Sanskrit terminology, uses a lot of the yoga that was brought into Kashmir Shaivism that was formed in the Trika Shaivist era of about 800 AD or 800 CE to about 1100 CE. That 300 years that formed what we now call Kashmir Shaivism. What we practice was pre that and was brought into it. So it looks similar often, but we do not practice Kashmir Shaivism in the sense that we don't have a god, Shiva, who has a Leela that they play with and mess with everybody. And, you know, it's a whole different world. It's a religion. Although it was a high religion, it's not what we're doing. Just to make sure you understand that. Okay. So yeah, I'm not authority enough to talk about Gnosticism. Sorry about that. Mr. Natural. Hello. Leonardo, thanks. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay. There are also different schools under Gnosticism. Yep. I'm sure. I just don't know them, and that's why I'm not going to talk about them. Christoph Kocha, can we have physical illnesses that show up throughout certain stages? You won't have physical illnesses, Christoph, that show up because you're in that stage. It's not a one-to-one correlation. No. You could have physical illnesses at any stage of the process up till stage 10, and they would all be manifestations of some type of karmic movement. But we can't pigeonhole it, right? It's not a Louise Hay kind of new age thing like you bumped your knee, therefore you're in stage 2 and you're not moving forward in life. You know, that kind of cookbook stuff just doesn't work. It's not real. It's total BS. But physical illness is not unusual to come up. I was just talking to somebody about this. I was on a heart monitor for a few weeks when I was a kid. When I was 16, they thought I had a really bad heart problem. Well, I did, because it was going arrhythmic, beating out of control, and then it would stop dead and I would pass out. I would see this black curtain come down over my eyes. And next thing I know, I'd be on the floor opening my eyes. And no one knew what was going on. I certainly didn't. My heart would stop. But it was a heart chakra kind of opening experience is what was going on. And the heart monitor showed these problems, but the doctors, after examining my heart, I had a cardiologist friend lived right across the street from us. He said, look, we don't have a clue what's going on with you. Do you feel fine? I said, well, I'm still wrestling and I'm still having fun. And yeah, just pass out once in a while when my heart goes crazy. Am I going to die? And he's like, we don't know. I'm like, okay. So I let it go. And within a few months, that all stopped. But that was during a period of very deep heart opening. I was 16 or 17 and I was starting to practice a lot more meditation at that time. And things were opening up for me. And I was in love. That mattered too. That was my first true love. So all that stuff was opening the heart. That came back again really strong in 1988 or 89. And I started passing out again. And all that stuff came up. Another era of big heart opening, heart chakra opening for me again. So the heart disease came back. And now I haven't had it since, except for little ticks here and there when I get too tired. But it's not a disease, right? I just overdo it sometimes. So you may have any kind of symptom may come up at any of the stages up until stage 10. At stage 10, there's no more illness. It's done because all personal karma is completely done, right? Okay. But please don't think, oh, in this stage, you have to have this kind of karma, or in that stage, you have this kind of disease. It doesn't work like that. Okay, the follow-up from Christoph, thinking more along the lines of you eat or be eaten, especially with my practices lately, a lot of opening going on. Disease, it's the same answer. You can't say which karmas will come out when and which ones will cause illness or which ones will cause just this disruption in your life and your circumstances. Don't think about it. Digest it all. The thing about eating is we're all supposed to be eating all of our own karmas. We're supposed to be digesting our own death eventually and becoming an immortal. Think of it that way. That's really what we're supposed to be doing. Okay. Yov B.A. It is a Hebrew name. Okay. Job. I see. Hi, Job. Job was King David's commander of the army. He was? Oh, Joab, not Job. Thank you for your elaborated answer. Every point you touched worth an entire discussion. Oh, true. And maybe we'll have that one day. Let's get a cup of tea and talk about it. I love this stuff. I was a big Bible study person because I trained to go into the seminary for Catholic priesthood. And I wanted to know the Bible really well and the Christian Bible. But then I got interested in Judaism from that and Islam as well. So we could have a great talk. Rohan of Elven Power. Is this my son? Is that Rohan? I don't know. This could be my son. No, it's not? Okay. My son's name is Rohan, and he would write something just like that. Hi, I'm new to your channel. Hi, welcome, Rohan. Would you say the 3 tattva types of trika, impure, pure, and pure, pure, are equivalent to Trikaya of Buddhism and the other Hindu idea of 3 separate Kundalini types. That the breakdown, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, the 3, all this stuff, it's very similar. But Rohan, you don't want to make the mistake of thinking they're the same, because the view of shunya, the view of spaciousness, of ultimate Shiva nature, to say it from a Shaivist point of view, or ultimate Buddha nature from a Buddhist point of view, right? Or ultimate nature of mind from the Dzogchen Bumpo side of town. That ultimate nature, that shunya, that emptiness, that open spaciousness is different from the Trikaya Buddhism versus Shaivism. It is different. It's subtly different, but it's different. And it has to do with monism. It has to do with a certain sense of eternalism that's there, a certain sense of incorrect view as far as the wider view sees it. I was just describing this earlier, where Shaivism would say that you merge with Shiva when you come fully realized, and your individuality is completely extinguished forever. And that's not what Mahasiddha Yoga has ever said. So in our case, you merge with and understand your essence nature as Shiva, same as everybody else. And that's oneness, that's non-duality. But you are never extinguished as an individual knower. It just becomes ultimately purified. So you're a knower without object. And that's another long discussion. That's very high philosophy. Maybe we'll go into that with a course in a year or two. Right now, we don't need it. But just know that they're different. They're not really the same. And it's because of the ultimate fruit. The view that describes the ultimate fruit is different from Mahasiddha Yoga or Trikaya of Vajrayana and Dzogchen and Wu Wei Taoism than it is from Kashmir Shaivism. There's a distinct difference. I will be discussing these topics in great detail, I'm sure, and probably get nice and hot and feisty with Christopher Wallace, the translator scholar of Kashmir Shaivism. He's wanted to have a go at me on these topics for a really long time. So we're going to give him his time in the ring with me on that one. Intellectual ring, of course. So stay tuned for those. Our podcast we're going to do it on is called Guerrilla Dharma. And Guerrilla Dharma, Guerilla Dharma, will be coming out pretty soon. We're in the last phases of getting it together now. And one of the first guests will be Harish. And I'm sure he'll come on many times because we have lots of things to argue about. Can depression, anxiety exist above stage 3? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is important. Depression, anxiety, etc., can exist above stage 3, but how you experience it will be different. How you will react or not react to it. That is the difference, because of how you identify with it or don't identify with this passing experience. That's what changes as you go stage 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the important thing, okay? Very important to understand that difference. You'll still have these emotions. You wouldn't be human if you didn't have emotions come in and out, right? Christoph Kocha, thinking more along the lines of, oh, he did that, right? Okay. Aleid, hello, Aleid in Mallorca, Dutch in Mallorca. Do you believe that these are special times more than other times? No. That's the first big no. There are many people saying more high stage souls are incarnating onto Earth and that young people can heighten their vibration with easy. No. Total New Age gibberish. Okay. Total New Age gibberish. It's not any different time than any other time. We've had plagues before. We've had epidemics, pandemics. They almost wiped out all of humanity. My brother, who does a lot of this research, told me that we got down to 2,000 people on the earth at one point from illness and cataclysmic ecological changes. 2,000 people. Now, there weren't 9 billion people at the time, down to 2,000. But whatever we had at that time, maybe there was like 1 million humans. We got down to 2,000. We almost got snuffed out. So no, it's not an unusual time. It's not a special time. We always want to make everything so special. We're specially stupid right now, that's for sure. Because with all the technological, scientific know-how we have now, to let idiots who aren't scientists run our government and make our choices for us, to let religions run governments and run people's societies is just plain stupid. So stupid it can get us killed. Let's put an example real quick for you here, Aleid. When the Viking people, the Scandinavians, my ancestors, started setting out from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and they wanted to find the rest of the world, some Dutch as well, as you know. They ended up going off northwest and found the Faroe Islands and found Greenland and found Iceland and found eventually Nova Scotia and all the way down to New York, apparently. Well, the same people, the very same people that settled Greenland and Iceland, the same people settled both places. And Greenland colony collapsed terribly, and Iceland thrived and survived. And Iceland actually had no topsoil. It was definitely an inhospitable place for sure. Greenland had no population as well. Greenland had a population of people there already. It was definitely inhospitable in certain senses, but you could easily survive there if you learned from the local people. The Scandinavians, again, the same root of people. We should all take this lesson. This is a very important lesson. The same group of people broke off. One ended up in Greenland, one in Iceland. The ones in Greenland said, we're not going to mix with these low-class heathen type people. They don't know our gods, They don't know the class system. We're not going to eat their foods. We're going to eat our cows, which died pretty quick. We're going to eat our chickens, which died pretty quick. And it's like, oh, what are we going to eat now? And they kept these stupid ideas, and they were very aggressive as well. And they made war against the local people instead of trying to learn from them. Eventually, local people just had enough of them, the Inuit people, and said, you guys got to go. And they just wiped them all out. So they were starving already, and then they just got wiped out. Well, if you look at Iceland, it's such a difference. The same people got there and said, with their rational, scientific, intelligent mind, which we should be using, it overtook their government, it overtook their culture, their minds, their rational human minds. Norse people were very smart. Of course, all the modern inventions we have today pretty much came from them. And we go, okay, they said, we can't survive here if we do everything like we used to do. We got to think of a new way. So they did their own kind of permaculture and started developing topsoil, and they changed the idea that only certain people from certain classes could eat certain foods and blah, 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 blah. And they survived and did quite well and created a beautiful society and community. In fact, they were, in the old world, the most literate people in the world. I think they had 100% literacy in 1000 something or 998, which was like unheard of, 100% literacy in Old Norse and Latin, which was amazing. So I think it's very important that we kill the New Age principles. I mean, ruthlessly rip them apart with great compassion and never bring them back into our spiritual lives again. This New Age world that we're in right now is part of the problem we're having. Big part of the problem we're having in the world. Postmodernism, New Age, it's all the same stuff. Communism, it's all messing us up. All these ideologies. Now, the idea it's a special time and so forth. Now, you could be forgiven a little bit because this idea that it's a special time did trickle into the Indian, and I'm not a big fan of Indian spirituality post 1200 AD. Post 1200 CE, I think it all went off the rails constantly. And what happened was, from Muslim influence, from Christian influence, they developed a kind of universalism. And that's where I think even Kashmir Shaivism developed this universalism, and that I don't agree with, and a God that I don't agree with. And what happened was, in the past 200 years, you had Sri Aurobindo. He was a big influence on modern yogins who went out and taught all around the world. The lineage that you come from in your yoga, that lady probably can trace back. One of her gurus or gurus was heavily influenced by Aurobindo. They almost all were. It was the big debate I had against the Bihar School of Yoga's leader, Satyananda, theoretically around Aurobindo's teachings. I didn't buy it. I don't buy that consciousness is evolving. It doesn't make any sense. I've never experienced that in my deepest meditation. I've never read it in any of the view teachings from the 3 highest views that we use in Mahasiddha Yoga. And I've never read it from any of the biographies of the great saints who've been up there and attained light body. Consciousness is not evolving. Only the temporal can evolve, right? It's ridiculous to say ultimate consciousness is evolving. That's what's underneath all this. Aurobindo was really big into that, and that made it into modern yoga. And modern yoga is very much tied up with New Age. Everybody who plays with crystals and stuff goes to yoga class as well. It's all that whole thing. So there's no special souls incarnating now because it's a very special time and we're about to go under. I mean, you look at the, it's a big commercial culture as well. It's just a way to make money. If you're watching anything on YouTube, at least down here in Costa Rica, we try to do a workout and listen to music on YouTube through our sound system. And every second or third song, and sometimes 2 or 3 times in one song, comes on these Gaia ads. Are they annoying as F or what? Are all you guys sick of Gaia ads or what? Oh, the Pleiadians, when I was very young, in my very past life, I was a Pleiadian and the spaceships look like this and da-da-da. I'm born to remember to help you. Oh, please save it, buddy. Such a bunch of crap. Doesn't help anybody. No one grows from it. Nothing real comes out of it. It's nothing but new age mumbo jumbo to make money by a lot of really confused people who would never do sadhana because they don't have a spine or a backbone for it. It's all entertainment, right? So I don't want anybody on this group to fall prey to those new age ideas. There's so many of them. One is that we're a special time now. The indigo children are being born. These children are so special. Oh, so special. So the parents like serve them and ruin the kids' lives, instead of giving the kids discipline and understanding that they need to survive today. And we're not in a special time. We're in a special time in that we're at a collapse ecologically because we've never had this population or the amount of science available to destroy the planet like we're doing. That's a certainly new thing. I wouldn't call it special. But we've always had an impact on the land. That's no question about it. Ever since human beings have been around for 2 million years, we've had impact. It's just there's enough of us now that we can ruin it. Not a special time, meaning it's a special spiritual time. It's a sad spiritual time because if we go, that's the end of the Dharma. It's over. It's done. So it's sad that way, but not special. And certainly not special that we should feel lucky to be born right now or that young people are so special and they're going to change it all. We got to get off our butts, us old people, and fix what we messed up. That's what we got to do. We got to take responsibility for it. Not put it on the young kids. Oh, yeah, the indigo kids and these new young kids and oh, they're amazing. Yeah, and we left them a terrible world. Let's fix it for them, can we? Not your son, Rohan. Thank you, Rohan. Maybe we were in past life, though. Who knows? Mr. Natural. Debating is good. It's good if you really want to find your own nature. It's bad if you just want to prove you're right. I skipped a Lulu question. Oh, Lulu, hi. I had the same feeling like Leonardo during the Tattva Shuddhi. At the same time, I now feel like meditating longer after rebirthing all the way back. Yeah. So when you come all the way back, you're also present in a new way and with less discursive mind. You can see how that affects it. You can sit longer in meditation there too. That's great. Mr. Natural, old school, very old school. Me too. Narratus, what would be a one necessary practice besides meditation that would be useful to do before getting into TMY? Asking because I'm not ready for it, but don't want to close the door to it either. If a speaking meditation practice is fine too, if there is one. Yeah, actually, if you don't want to go down one of the 5 ways of practice, Narratus, because you're not ready for it, that's fine. Do the preliminary program, just that one program. In it are the contemplations and I think exercise of centering, right? So exercise of centering, which is an absolutely wonderful technique, which takes us from the most beginner level of meditation, like I don't even know what my mind is, that level, all the way to Rainbow Light Body if we understand how to use it and we get the refining pith instructions at each new stage, right? The same practice done a little bit different all the way. That's in the preliminaries program. That's up for sale right now. And also you get all these contemplations. And all these contemplations are so important to lay down a good foundation. And they're easy. You just sit and contemplate concepts and apply them to yourself. Anyone can do that. I'd recommend that before you dig into deeper Trikomasana yoga. It's actually prerequisite for the higher level 5 ways anyway, so it doesn't matter. So take your time and enjoy them. Yeah, there's no rush. No rush. Nelson. Is there any problem with sleeping directly on the floor in front of the shrine? Should it be closed, covered during sleep? No, I sleep. When I sleep in front of the shrine, I keep it open, of course, because I want to be in that reverence of it. You can sleep right in front of it, sure. Alade, especially stupid, yes, haha. Also, that wakes up. Yes. Nara Yoga, are you saying even such Ananda believed consciousness is evolving? As far as I know, I didn't talk to him his last 4 or 5 years of his life. But before that, he did think that consciousness was evolving. He would say that, but I didn't get to ask him, do you mean the space element, Shiva nature, is evolving, or do you mean the manifestation of the Shiva Bindu into the Shakti Bindu, and the Nara Bindu is evolving, because those are always evolving, those other two Bindus, but not the ultimate Shiva Bindu, the way he taught it, and the way ancient Shaivist yoga teaches it, and the same as Dzogchen. So I never got to ask that in the end. But he never used to teach very much in the absolute. He was almost always teaching the relative. I was just telling my wife that only one time that I ever heard him give instruction on eye-open meditation. And he was kind of doing it in a teasing way, saying, ha, 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 everybody like this meditating. This is not the advanced. This is not the highest. This is the advanced. He was demonstrating, eye-open meditation, sky gazing and stuff. I was like, whoa. So he knew all this kind of stuff, but he tended not to teach that. Let's see. Magda, in the Old Testament, it is said that the rainbow is a sign of a treaty with God. Yeah, that he wouldn't kill us anymore. That's what that was. God says, so I don't slaughter you human beings anymore. I'm going to give you a rainbow as a promise. Oh, gee, thanks. Thanks for that. Treaty with God in a sense. I was always much intrigued with the rainbow and what it meant as a sign, a symbol for humanity in our sky. Yeah, I just think there's something innate about a rainbow that everybody sees it, and it gives you some kind of inspiration towards something beyond your mind. That's what I think, beyond this realm, beyond your mind. I mean, you're seeing the one white light being split into the seven lights. I mean, right there is a perfect analogy for looking at the Sambhogakaya coming into the Nirmanakaya. So something speaks to that of us, and why we like light going through a crystal for the same reason. As far as the way the Jews turned it into a promise from God, Yahweh, that he wouldn't annihilate us anymore, was like horrific. Oh, thanks. Thanks for not killing us anymore. You made us in the first place. Now you go and kill us and torture us. Oh, my goodness. Those old days when I was a Christian. So funny. Nelson, almost got killed in the past because of New Age stuff. Yeah, I can imagine. Kamala, how should one view frequent, powerful, or long days, lasting deja vu experiences? Oh, so that's a fun thing, sort of. Sometimes not so fun, can be very disconcerting, sometimes ready for the loony bin. Basically, time, space are opening up a bit. When you have experiences like that, time, space can be opening up. Now, please make note, everybody. Can be positive, can be negative. Time, space opening up is not always positive. You ever see the movies where time, space opens up and all the aliens come filing through into your world and destroy you and take you prisoner and make you a slave? Yeah. So time, space portals are not always great. Here I'm just talking with a funny example there, but here I'm saying when we open into our wider state and we're not ready to integrate that experience, what experience? Cyclic time or no time as they're called. If we're not ready to be that being that lives in cyclic time or no time, it'll be disconcerting for sure. We will not be able to hold it together. We will not be able to hold it together, and we'll have problems. It'll cause us anxiety, stress, missed appointments. We'll mess up all kinds of things. So we have to get to a certain grounded place of wisdom, of our own nature, and then when those things open up, it's okay. So if they're opening up ahead of time and you're getting little glimpses, just see them like little glimpses, little previews. Whatever you do, don't dwell on it, and it'll pass. And if it's opening a lot and really disturbing you, then you go back to foundation practices, because you need a better foundation to open, to create. So when the openings occur, there's a way for it to fall into the context of your life and your experience, and it won't be so destabilizing. Okay? Where can we take the preliminary course with the centering meditation practice? Can I type it in there? You typed it in? So in the chat, just below your name is, no, it's not on mine. I don't see it. I'm in the chat box. Where can we take the preliminary? It's not there. There's Kamala saying, thank you so much. You wrote it individually? Let me just write it for everybody. How come I can't see it? Can someone just write to me real quick and see if you can see trikaprelims.com where the course can be found? Sukalia says she typed it in the chat box, but it doesn't come up in my box. I want to make sure people have access to it. Hello.
Can't see it either. I'm so done with technology.
You can't see it either.
No, Yogi just said he can't see it. So I'm going to write it in.
Okay. I'm going to write it in. Tell me what it is, please. www.trikaprelims.com. trikaprelims.com. See if that came up. www.trikaprelims.com. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody, that is where you can get the prelims until the website gets finally up in a few more days. Still clearing it with all the government red tape and stuff of living down here.
Any videos have been delaying for people, we just got feedback from our video streaming provider service that there's a way for us to make them better, speed up, so we're gonna work on that.
Okay, so for you people who have had a difficulty with the streaming of the videos on that, we just got a message back from our streaming provider that said there's a way to make them stream faster and smoother, and we are in the process right now of implementing that. So that should speed up soon. So that's good too. Okay, any other last questions before we go? On this lovely Sunday here, and in Asia, it is, Australasia, it is Monday, I believe. All right, or Sunday evening, very late. No? Okay, so without further ado, be well, and we'll see you at the next class. Do you want to end this for me here so I don't erase it? End stream? You're welcome, everybody. Love you. Bye. Are you sure you want to end your stream?
Yes.
And I just hit end.